this guy says that he can turn the phone into a horse and then ride away. Everyone would come. And if I told everyone, okay, if you want to turn the phone into the horse, then you have to believe La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasul. Everyone would say that. The whole world would come to see it. Because no one can do that. That's exactly what the Arabic of the Quran was like. It's the same type of relationship. And that's why when you read in the seerah, all of these Arabs that would come and just hear like a verse or two from the Prophet ﷺ, and they would say their shahada, that was the power of the Arabic had, because for them it was like somebody just turned this phone into a war. No one can do that. No one can speak like that. And the Arabs, they were very proficient in Arabic. They had these famous poems called al-mu'allaqat, the hung poems, and they would hang them inside the Kaaba, because this was considered the most exquisite, refined use of the Arabic language. But when the Prophet ﷺ comes and he just starts reciting some of the verses, they realize that, oh, this is, how can you do that with language? Language, we can't do that with Arabic language. There's no way you made that up. There's no way you could have said that. Because we have the best Arabic, the best poems. But this is not poetry. This is like magic. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasul. That's the effect that it had. But to understand that relationship, you have to be, the Arabic language has to be part of your psyche the way it was for the Jahili Arabs, for that to make sense. So we believe that it is the Quran, and if you read like the tafsir and you get it, the tafsir itself, there's no tafsir that's shorter than 10 volumes. And every generation we have more and more tafsir. We find more things in the Quran. We see it. We see that it's a miracle. How come the same verse, people for the last 1,400 years still think about the same verse and come up with something new? I mean, that's a miracle right there in and of itself. But the way the Quran sounds, the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes phenomena, the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the natural phenomena, the heavens and the earth, وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍ لَهَا, that the sun marches towards its motion that is set for it. Up until medieval times, we would have understood that verse as a natural observation that we are on earth and we see from our perspective that the sun rises and the sun sets, the sun rises and the sun sets. But then we realize, as we advance in our understanding, that the earth is not the center of the solar system, but it's the sun. And it is the earth that is spinning around itself and spinning around the earth that creates night and day and creates the season. So we would say, okay, this is just from the human observation. But we advance our understanding and we find that the sun actually does have its own mini orbit and has its own revolution. So all of these interpretations are valid from that same verse. Now, if the Prophet ﷺ was just like a super poet, he would have never been able to come up with that on his own. Because this is something that lives throughout time. It lives throughout time, the meanings of the Quran. So even though in this section he talks a lot about the linguistic miracles of the Quran, to understand those linguistic miracles, you have to understand language, you have to understand Arabic grammar, and you have to understand urud, how poems are balanced, you have to understand balagha, you have to understand rhetoric, how the Arabic expresses itself, to see the magic of the language of the Quran. And the good news is that the people that are able to access this the most are non-Arabs. Because non-Arabs, when they study language, when they study the Arabic language, they study the Arabic language through studying its rules. Whereas Arabs, they don't, if you grow up speaking Arabic, you don't study it that way. You don't know all the rules. You just you know how to speak and you know how it sounds and that's it. So you miss a lot of things. But people that are not Arabs, originally non-Arabs, and they study